Hey there, my dear friends. This is your host, and you are watching our channel. Now, today we're going to be listening to a very well-known fairy tale that most of you have probably heard before. It's the story of Little Red Riding Hood. So let's listen to the story now. Once upon a time, in a village surrounded by dense woods, lived a young girl who was known as Little Red Riding Hood because of the red-hooded cloak that her grandmother had made for her. One day her mother fell ill, and Little Red Riding Hood's grandmother went to see how she was doing. "Oh, my dear," said the grandmother when she got there, "what can I do for you?" "Oh," replied her daughter, "I would like some food from you. My dears, and some wine. We've just about run out here, and I am simply too sick to go to the shops myself." "Don't worry," said the grandmother. "I will take a basket over to you right away." So she did. The grandmother picked up all the food and wine that her daughter wanted and put them in a basket. Then she called Little Red Riding Hood. "My dear child, I want you to take this basket over to your mother. She is very sick and needs these things." "Oh, yes, ma'am," said Little Red Riding Hood. And then she took the basket on her arm and went out the door. At first, Little Red Riding Hood skipped happily along the path into the forest. But after a while, she began to think to herself, "Why must I hurry? I have plenty of time, and I really don't feel like walking fast." So she slowed down to a lazy stroll. And as she walked through the trees, she came across a clearing. And in the middle of the clearing sat a wolf who was licking his chops. Little Red Riding Hood stopped dead in her tracks and stared at the wolf in disbelief. Wolves were rare in these parts, and she had never seen one before. "Well, hello there," said the wolf, noticing that Little Red Riding Hood had stopped. "Where are you off to, little girl?" "Why, I am on my way to my mother's," replied Little Red Riding Hood. "She isn't feeling well, and my grandmother sent her some food and wine." Said the wolf. "Your mother lives in the direction of the sunset, doesn't she?" "Yes, that's right," said Little Red Riding Hood. "Well, that's exactly where I am headed. Perhaps we could walk together." "Oh, no, thank you," said Little Red Riding Hood. "My grandmother told me not to speak to strangers." "But my dear," said the wolf, "I am no stranger. I may live deep in the forest, but I know everyone in this village. I am friends with the baker, the butcher, and even the miller. Why should you be afraid to walk with me?" "Well, I still don't want to," said Little Red Riding Hood. "And besides, I really need to get home as soon as possible." And with that, she turned to leave, but the wolf was quick. In a flash, he was in front of her, blocking her path. "You may not want to walk with me," he said, "but you will tell me where your mother lives." "No," said Little Red Riding Hood. And she tried to push past the wolf, but he held out a paw and stopped her. "If you won't tell me where your mother lives, then tell me where your grandmother lives instead." "Oh, no, I can't tell you that either," said Little Red Riding Hood. And she struggled to get around the wolf, but he was too strong for her. "Then perhaps," said the wolf with a sly grin, "you will tell me if I ask you another question." "All right," said Little Red Riding Hood. "Ask away." "What is in the basket that you are carrying?" "Oh, it's just some food and wine for my sick mother," said Little Red Riding Hood. "Well, that sounds delicious," said the wolf. "How about if we take those things to your grandmother's house instead?" "No, no, no," said Little Red Riding Hood. "My grandmother wouldn't want those things. She is old and doesn't have much of an appetite." "Nonsense," said the wolf. "These things will surely cheer her up. Why don't we take them to her right now?" Little Red Riding Hood knew that she couldn't reason with the wolf, so when he offered to walk her to her grandmother's house, she agreed. The wolf quickly finished his snack and then raced through the trees towards Little Red Riding Hood's grandmother's house. By the time Little Red Riding Hood arrived, the wolf had already eaten the grandmother and was lying in her bed waiting for Little Red Riding Hood to arrive. At the door, he heard her knock and call out, "Hello, grandmother. It's me, Little Red Riding Hood." "Come in, my dear," said the wolf in a voice that sounded exactly like Little Red Riding Hood's grandmother. Little Red Riding Hood opened the door and stepped inside. "Oh, grandmother," she said, "what big eyes you have." "All the better to see you with, my dear," replied the wolf. "Oh, grandmother," she said, "what big ears you have." "All the better to hear you with, my dear," replied the wolf. "Oh, grandmother," she said, "what sharp claws you have." "All the better to hug you with, my dear," replied the wolf. Now, Little Red Riding Hood was beginning to feel suspicious. She looked at the wolf's paws and noticed that they were bigger than her grandmother's. And when she looked into his eyes, she saw that they were shining like two bright headlights. Then, Little Red Riding Hood remembered what her grandmother had told her. Never speak to strangers, no matter how nicely they ask. So she ran out of the house as fast as she could and didn't stop running until she reached the safety of her own home. When the wolf realized that he had been outsmarted, he became furious. He wanted to chase after Little Red Riding Hood, but he knew that if he left the house, people in the village might see him. So he stayed inside and pretended to be Little Red Riding Hood's grandmother. But after a while, he began to feel very hungry, and he wished that he could eat Little Red Riding Hood. Just then, Little Red Riding Hood's mother knocked on the door. "Come in," said the wolf in Little Red Riding Hood's grandmother's voice. Little Red Riding Hood's mother entered the room and said, "Oh, mother, what big eyes you have!" "All the better to see you with, my dear," replied the wolf. "Oh, mother, what big ears you have!" "All the better to hear you with, my dear," replied the wolf. "Oh, mother, what big claws you have!" "All the better to hug you with, my dear," replied the wolf. Little Red Riding Hood's mother began to feel very suspicious. She had never liked wolves, and she felt something was not right. So she took a step back and looked at the wolf. Suddenly she noticed that he wasn't wearing any pants. "Oh, mother," she said, "why aren't you wearing any pants?" "All the better to lick myself with, my dear," replied the wolf. With that, Little Red Riding Hood's mother drew out a gun and shot the wolf right between the eyes. Then she cut open the wolf's stomach and found Little Red Riding Hood's grandmother inside. She quickly pulled her out and asked if she was all right. "Yes, I am fine," said the grandmother. "Thank you for saving me." Then Little Red Riding Hood's mother went to the window and shouted, "Everyone, come quick! I have just killed a wolf that was trying to eat us, and inside this wolf's stomach, I found Little Red Riding Hood's grandmother." Soon everyone in the village came running, and when they heard what had happened, they all cheered for Little Red Riding Hood's mother. "Hooray, hooray," they shouted, for Little Red Riding Hood's cleverness and her mother's bravery. From that day on, Little Red Riding Hood always listened to her mother and never spoke to strangers again. And as for the wolf, well, no one ever forgot his sneaky trick of pretending to be Little Red Riding Hood's grandmother. And that, my dear friends, is the story of Little Red Riding Hood. Do you like this story? Do you know any other versions of this story? If so, please share them with us in the comment section below. And while you're there, please give this video a thumbs up to show us your support. We really appreciate it. And if you haven't done so already, please subscribe so that you can be notified every time we upload a new video. Until next time, this is your host saying goodbye.